Welcome to Rosie the Reviewer. We're your hosts. I'm Sam,
And I'm Marcia.
and we like World War II media, and we want to talk about it. Welcome back to Rosie the Reviewer. This week we are talking about the first season of the TV show X Company, which came out in 2015. It was created by Mark Ellis and Stephanie Morgenstern, and it ran for 3 seasons on the CBC. It follows 5 fictional recruits at Camp X, a real training camp for covert agents during World War II on the North Shore of Lake Ontario in Canada. We're going to cover each season in its own episode. So what did you think of the first season of X Company?
I wish I had known this show existed before we started doing this podcast, just because it's so good. I really enjoyed this show. And speaking of, I want to thank Robin Brouwers, I don't know if you pronounce her name in Dutch or in English, but she recommended the show to us being Canadian and Dutch, which is quite cool since we are Canadian and Dutch. And I don't know, when I started watching, after doing some sleuthing to try and find a way to watch it, I didn't really get into it for the first 2 episodes. And then, for some reason, I was hooked. And now I just want there to be more of it than there is. I really liked it. I was really surprised that it's quite heavy. It features some quite dark stuff, and they don't really shy away from it. And for some reason, I was ready to compare this to a CW show, which it's quite superficial usually, but this show is not. And I don't know about the CBC. You can probably tell me, is it usually this dark?
No, I was not expecting this. I'll be honest. I really thought we were going to get more of a lighter tone for this when I watched it.
Camp X is basically the SOE of Canada, I would say. It feels like that to me. Would that be what it is?
Well, actually, a lot of SOE agents trained at Camp X, a sort of training camp for SOE agents, and they also recruited Canadian locals. And they also trained trainers who went on to train people at the OSS, which is the predecessor of the CIA. So they had a few different things going on.
It's one of those things that I'd never heard of before. So the more you know once you do this podcast. How about you?
I mean, like I said, I was not sure what to expect going into this. CBC in the past few years has had, I would say, more misses than hits, unfortunately. But the CBC is known for Schitt's Creek, which was obviously quite a famous comedy a few years ago. And yeah, I don't know. I was expecting sort of more of that vibe a little bit. Maybe a sort of Avengers-esque found family situation, or maybe like you were saying, this a little bit slick and sexy sort of CW group ensemble situation. But it's not really like that. I mean, I find that you can tell there's quite a lot of historical research done. Even the little bits and pieces in the background are correct. And the characters all have their own individual character arcs. I find it's pretty well written in that way. It's like you said, it's dark in places. They really don't pull any punches. It can be quite startlingly violent. And the characters are a little morally nuanced. I mean, they are our protagonists and they are the quote unquote heroes of the show, but they also do things that are reprehensible sometimes. And I really enjoyed it. I think it's a really good watch. If you haven't ever heard of X Company before, and I don't blame you, it's not a super famous show, but you should try and find somewhere where you can watch it because it's quite good. It does have, speaking of Schitt's Creek, it does have Dustin Milligan, who was in Schitt's Creek, in it. So there is that.
I always want to say this show kind of deserves a little bit of a content warning, thinking about it, because there's a lot of blood, there's some assault, there's a lot of violence. So if you're sensitive to that, be aware that they show it all on this TV show. It's not very censored at all. I think that's good, but some people might find it slightly startling.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So let's get into the show. Episode 1 of Season 1 starts in France in 1942 in a village called Ville-Marie. We meet the team, starting with Britt New McKay, played by Warren Brown. He's our favorite. He's an explosive expert, and we also meet radio operator Harry James, played by Connor Price, American Adman Tom Cummings, played by Dustin Milligan, and we meet second in command Aurora Luft, played by Evelyn Brochu. She is German and French-Canadian. And they are led by the handsome leading man and also Aurora's love interest, René Villiers, played by Francois Arnaud.
Yeah, we lead off, we get right into the action. The first episode's pretty action packed, and you get a little bit of a sense of the format of the show. So it's kind of a mission of the week type thing, but there's also an overarching plot that's taking place in the background.
I was just gonna say, they do this pretty much every time. We're just dropped right into the mission. There's not very often much of a lead up to anything. There's another mission and they're on it already. So I thought that's quite interesting. You never get like, I wonder what our next mission is going to be. No, we're already in the middle of it. So it's quite nice.
Yeah, I quite like that show don't tell aspect. It's not like boring briefings and stuff like that. I like that the makeup of the team, they have, Aurora is German, but she's also French Canadian. And obviously we have an American on the team and a Brit on the team. And Camp X was kind of like that. It had people from all over. Famous alumni like Roald Dahl and Paul Den, who wrote Goldfinger and Murder on the Orient Express, would train at Camp X. There's also some anecdotal stories about Ian Fleming maybe training there, but we don't know for sure if that's true. But, it's kind of fun. It adds a little intrigue. But it was perhaps most useful because its location permitted the hiring of Hungarian, Yugoslavian, Russian, French, Italian, Japanese, and other foreign language speaking nationals from multicultural centers like Toronto and Montreal, who could be dropped into occupied countries to foment resistance and help out people on the ground there.
I don't understand how I'd never heard of this before. Like, why is it so unknown?
I think that after World War II, they destroyed a lot of the records. The physical location was put to a different use, and a lot of the people who worked there and went through the camp were sworn to secrecy. So similarly to the SOE, a lot of them just kept their mouth shut and took it to the grave with them.
I think it's kind of sad that you are so close to it, and yet there's nothing left of it. I'm like, why?
I know, it's super unfortunate, but I think on the website I've seen that they have like a little tour of the area or something. I think that would be neat to check out.
Definitely. Recruit someone and turn them into a World War II aficionado and take them with you.
Yeah. The group of them, their arrival in the village has resulted in a resistance fighter getting caught by the Nazis, and they must race against time to blow up a bridge, killing the local Nazis before they can retaliate against the local population for helping the resistance. So this is the kind of high stakes stuff that they're getting up to every episode.
I've already forgotten whether this thing I'm about to say is in this show. I think it is. Doesn't it start with a little kid being held at gunpoint and being told, if you stop saluting, I'll shoot you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's this episode. No, you're right. Do tell the story. Do tell, because it's very indicative of what kind of show this is.
In some shows, they go easy on the kids, right? They're like, we cannot do this to a child, and we cannot show this on TV. But there's a child, and I think she's painted some resistance symbol onto the laundry or something, and she gets caught, and a Nazi kind of appears and tells her, well, now we gotta make an example of you. We gotta punish you. And she has to do the Nazi salute, I believe, if I remember correctly. And the Nazi tells her, if you stop saluting, I will shoot you, or the other guy will shoot you because there's another Nazi. And he ends up showing her mercy, but you're like, this is how the show opens. It's so tense.
Yeah, super brutal. And you're like, okay, I see. So we're not even the kids get off scot-free in this show.
And this is not a 16-year-old. This is like a 7-year-old. This is a very small child.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But I guess if nothing else, indicative of the true brutality and ruthlessness of the Nazis right off the bat.
Yeah, it's very true. And I thought that this Nazi that showed her mercy, I thought he was going to be a main character. But I think that about a lot of characters in this show, and they don't stick around for very long.
Yeah, they come and go. And there are as well, obviously all the main characters are fictional, but sometimes in the background, every now and again, there'll be a real figure from history,
We get a nice little animated transition, and we move back to Camp X. I want to say this is the only part where you can kind of see it's low budget. It's the animation in this. It's kind of wonky. But anyway, it's a nice way to kind of show you're moving from France back to Canada. So back at Camp X in Ontario, we meet Duncan Sinclair, which is the leader of leaders, played by Hugh Dillon. He's the CEO. and he's trying to recruit Alfred Graves, played by Jack Lasky, who is a nervous young man with synesthesia and a photographic memory. As you can imagine, if you're a secret agent, it would be quite useful to have these skills. We also meet Sergeant Christina Breland, played by Lara Jean Torostaki. And she's the team's behind-the-scenes liaison at the home base. She's cool, I like her.
I love Christina. She's one of my favorite characters, and she also turns out to be kind of a hard ass later on.
I feel like they all are. I have to say, at this base, there's quite a few women that seem to be holding down the fort.
Yeah, for sure. They're doing a lot of the radio operator stuff and the encrypting and decrypting and all that. Besides being a training facility for secret agents, Camp X was also a centralized radio and telecommunications center. It was called Hydra, and you see it in the show. It's this big transmitter, and it was designed to transmit messages between the United States, Canada, Great Britain, South America. It could transmit messages all over the world. And many parts for Hydra were scavenged secondhand, and many of the radio operators who ended up working at Camp X were actually recruited from amongst amateurs who were known in hobby circles for being particularly gifted transmitters. And obviously, we see some women doing that work in the show. And the transmissions were encrypted by the RockX cipher machine, which was designed by another Canadian, an engineer named Benjamin DeForest Bailey. And so I thought it was really cool that in the show, they stuck to that true history and we got to see all that stuff happening in the background.
It's funny because I read the word Hydra. I had not really picked up on it on the show, and all I can think about is Captain America.
Yeah, but this Hydra is a good one. So the name of the CO is Duncan Sinclair. I think Sinclair is a nod to Sinclair House, which was an old farmhouse that was on the Camp X property already when it was purchased by the government.
Very cool. I really like this CO character. He's a tough guy, but he's also quite soft. So I like that at all. He's like the dad of the group.
He really is. He's like the dad who's tough but fair on the group. But he also makes some pretty wild decisions throughout the course of the show.
Yes, he does. And just a little explanation for those of you who would like to know a little bit more about Alfred and his condition, synesthesia. When you have synesthesia, your brain routes sensory information through multiple unrelated senses, causing you to experience more than one sense simultaneously. So some people I know kind of attribute colors to numbers or weekdays or something like that. And I feel like with Alfred, he kind of gets everything all at once. So he can taste words and he can see lots of colors and shapes and all that. So it's very neat. But also, I feel like it's totally made up for the show.
Yeah, I mean, it does factor into this romantic plotline he has with Aurora later, where he doesn't want to say her name because it has all these relations to other things in his head. And then he does say her name, and it's a whole thing.
I do like the way they use his ability to also have him experience trauma in different ways. And we'll get to it later, but there's some torture. When he has to kill someone, something happens, and it's all related to his senses, and I quite like the way they used it.
Yeah, I like that too. Well, and to wrap up the first episode, Renee, our fearless team leader, is shot and presumed dead.
Oh no. I mean, I feel like we barely even got to know him.
Yeah. Farewell, Renee. We hardly knew you.
He's only there to look pretty, really.
Yeah. Well, I feel like in this episode too, we get to see like it's Harry who kind of fucks up the explosive device as the Nazis are coming and he's trying to fix it. And Renee is like, you know, like blow the bridge. And it's this whole thing where it's like very tense, but we get to see some of the characters be kind of new and inexperienced at their job. And then as the show goes on, they progress and they get better. In some cases, they get like harder personality wise. And so I enjoyed that aspect too.
If we look at this crew, if we talk about Harry for a second, because he's kind of the baby of the group. They keep saying he's a kid. He doesn't look like a kid. I feel like he's in his 20s, but everybody else thinks he's not up for the job, which he is, up to a point, I guess. I don't know who my favorite character was after this first episode, but I think it's Neil. I just think it's still Neil, even after 2 seasons. But
well,
yeah.
Acceptable. I also like Neil.
So, as you can tell, we're not really spoiling the entire episode for you. I mean, we're spoiling some bits, but you can definitely go and watch it because these episodes are 45 minutes long. So they're quite good.
Yeah, it's a proper thriller drama situation.
So, episode 2. They've recruited Alfred at this point, and he has reluctantly joined the team for a mission to Chartres, I can't pronounce this either, which is also France, to steal German codes that will allow the Allies to predict German bombing rates. Pretty cool. But he has a bit of a shaky start, but he acquits himself pretty well, and well enough to be invited to be a permanent member of the team. So there's that.
Aurora has ascended to team leader, which, I mean, she was the second in command before, so it makes sense. But it's nice that her skills are valued enough by other members of the team that they're not like, ugh, why do we have a girl leading us, you know?
No, they trust her. She's kind of, to them, she's the glue of the group.
Yeah.
They mention it in some episodes as well where it doesn't really work without her. So I quite like that she gets to be that central piece in a group. I also like how reluctant she is to be team leader because the reason she's made team leader is because Renee's dead. And she's upset about this. I feel like we should reiterate. She loves him very much and he's dead. And she's like very upset about it.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. And I like that they made it that she was reluctant to be team leader for that reason and not because she didn't think she was up to the job or not because she wasn't tough enough. Because listen, this lady's pretty fucking ruthless. The next thing that happens in the episode is that they encounter some suspicious locals who are this family, the husband, the wife, and the kid. And the husband works for the Vichy regime. And so the team is worried that these people are going to rat them out. And Aurora is like, oh, well, shoot them. Next. She literally is like, she doesn't care. She's like, we got to do our mission. Sorry that these people got in the way, I guess. And then we get to also learn a little bit more about Tom, our American advertising man, because he's like, well, how about you let me talk to them and I'll try and talk them around. And he ends up manipulating them by lying to them. The wife believes that her husband was killed in an Allied bombing raid. And he's like, actually, what you don't know is that the Germans sabotaged that factory to turn the French populace against the Allies. And afterwards, someone's like, oh, is that true? He's like, no. 100% just made that up to manipulate them. But we get to see, you know, that sort of aspect of his personality, but also that Aurora was the one who was like, I don't care. This is time consuming. I'm leaving. You figure this out or shoot them. I don't care.
The show does a great job at making them face tough decisions without giving them an out. There are real problems and they always have to solve them. And there's no way out for them. I think that's a testament to good writing. It's not lazy in that way.
And this episode's good too because it really sets up one of the team's overall objectives is to build resistance on the ground in occupied country. So this is kind of the first time we see them starting to work with the locals and that kind of stuff. Episode 3, the team goes to Poitiers, still in France, to rescue a physicist with important weapons research who's been kidnapped by the Nazis.
With Tom as her backup, Aurora and Tom seem to be this kind of team very often in the show. They do little cons together, with Aurora doing most of the conning and Tom being there mostly for backup. Aurora goes and seduces a Nazi courier to steal the scientist's research. But then she goes off playbook and kills a high-ranking Gestapo officer known as the Bleeder by kind of seducing him. And then he almost assaults her. And then she's like, wait a second. I'm not going to let this happen to me. Fuck you. Now you're going to die. This episode just completely threw me. I was not expecting this to happen at all. There's also a little mention of a gay Nazi in this, that obviously the Nazis didn't like gay people very much. So this Nazi is hiding his gayness. And Aurora kind of helps him a little, even though he's a Nazi. But she doesn't help the other Gestapo, known as the Bleeder, because he's a nasty piece of shit. And I really like the way she ends him.
Yeah, well, even because they had sort of discussed earlier on that he might be present and they all agreed. They were like, we're not going to kill him. He's too high value as a Nazi. Like, if we do that, we're kind of going to blow our cover. And then Aurora ended up killing him anyway.
I suddenly had a realization, but it's something to do with season 2, so I won't talk about it yet. But just so you know, I'm just referencing this now, that something they say in this episode about him being a high-ranking guy and that having consequences will come back in season 2.
Yeah, for sure. And I like what you said about Aurora and Tom frequently working together because they're the more, I think, polished face of the team. They seem to be a little bit more able to talk their way in and out of situations. They're better at undercover work, whereas Neil's a bit more of the bruiser type. He's kind of the one who gets things done in the background. Obviously, Harry has the technical knowledge. He's the radio operator and that kind of stuff. And they're kind of starting to figure out how to fit Alfred into the team too.
I didn't really like Tom at the beginning of the season. I thought he was quite smooth and also not that useful, but I've changed my mind by now. So sorry, Tom, I like you now.
Well, Harry, Neil, and Alfred manage to extract the physicist, and Alfred makes his first kill, which, as you discussed before, is a pretty big deal for him.
I like what they do because Alfred has been training with Neil on how to kill people and how to disarm them and then shoot them. And as he kills this German that he has to kill, he flashes back to his training with Neil. And I quite like how they do that in the show. They do clever little things visually as well. For something being a low-budget show, they kind of mask it by having really cool storytelling tricks, which make you forget that it's a low-budget show.
Yeah, I would say you don't often notice that it's low budget. It was not something that I really thought much about.
And in this episode, we also meet our big-time Gestapo bad guy, Franz Faber, played by Torben Liebrecht, who is kind of our season's baddie, and who will end up trying to chase the team down, but he has a secret because he's hiding a disabled son. Which, in case you don't know, is something else the Nazis did not look favorable upon.
No, definitely. We see that he is literally hiding his son from other Nazis because his son has Down syndrome. So he's visually, you can tell that he's disabled. And so the other Nazis have never even seen his son. He's just keeping him completely under wraps.
His son's name is Uli. I quite liked Uli, but I have to say, when I saw this scene, it gave me the ick a little bit because he's a Nazi and they gave him something to feel sorry for him about. And I had some feelings about it. I feel less strongly about it now as the season has progressed. But it's a choice, to humanize him in that way.
Yeah, it's definitely a choice. As you say, as we go forward, I think that his character development and the way his character arc goes makes this is really foundational for his character, that he is a Nazi, but I mean, people can be more than one thing, right? So he is a Nazi, but simultaneously, when you see the background scenes of him at home, he's a really good dad. He obviously really loves his son and his wife. And I think that, like the protagonists who occasionally do heinous shit, they're like, well, you know what? Here's this Nazi, but we're also going to make this difficult for you as the viewer because people are not just one thing.
I agree. And I like it because it, once again, and we've talked about this before, it kind of shows us the danger that's all around us. We can see someone be a really good dad, but they very well could be a Nazi without us knowing. Doing good shit doesn't excuse you from doing bad shit or the other way around. I think they do a great job as the series goes on to have them both be extremely evil and good at the same time in a different situation.
The other thing that I really like is that the actor who plays Franz Faber is German, I assume. He speaks really good German. And so when there are scenes that only have Nazis in them, they speak German. But then when there's scenes that have our team in them, we're supposed to understand that they're multilingual. But I don't know if the actors are or are not. I'm assuming they're not, because in scenes where, like, for example, the team will be speaking to French civilians, so we're meant to understand they're speaking French, they just speak English with a French accent. Or similarly, if they're meant to be speaking with German people, they'll just speak English with a German accent, and that really tickles me.
It also tickled me that this actor, Torben Liebrecht, who plays Franz, he's also quite good at English. So when he speaks English, you almost forget that he's German.
For sure, yeah. He's the multilingual one. Everyone else.
Although, to be fair, I feel like most of them have some lines in German and some lines in French in this show, and it's not bad. So, episode 4.
Yeah. They're in Toulouse. The team is back behind enemy lines, and this time they're there to smuggle a British airman out of France. And the reason why this guy gets special treatment, because normally they wouldn't waste, like 5 or 6 secret agents on this, is because he's the son of a rich politician.
Yes, I did not like this guy very much. It's not his fault, but still, it made me feel like, what the heck are they doing? It made me feel kind of like the team in Saving Private Ryan, who's like, why do we have to go and save one guy? It felt like that.
Yeah.
So we also meet lounge singer Halle Duvernay, played by Karen LeBlanc. And she's clearly a take on Josephine Baker. She's very cool. And she agrees to help them to try and get this guy out. But only if they get her fellow musician out of jail, who's also, I think, maybe her lover. It's kind of up in the air a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's implied. A little info about Josephine Baker. She was an American vaudeville star. She became hugely popular in France in the 1920s. At the time, she may well have been the wealthiest Black woman alive. She fled Paris in 1940 as the Germans advanced, and she had a chateau in the south of France. So she sheltered many refugees at her home. And ultimately, knowing where her sympathies lay, she was approached to join the resistance. And she said, "France made me what I am. I will be grateful forever. The people of Paris have given me everything. I am ready to give them my life. You can use me as you wish," which is badass as hell. And so she used her ability to move in certain social circles to go to parties and go to meetings and collect information from high-ranking Nazis. And she also hid resistance fighters at her home. She supplied them with visas. And when eventually the Nazis started to suspect her, she had to flee France. And she brought with her a significant amount of secret intelligence to London. And when she returned to France after D-Day, she raised money to provide food and coal for fellow Parisians. So really cool lady. She was awarded the Croix de Guerre and the Rosette de la Résistance. And Charles de Gaulle also named her a Chevalier de Légion d'honneur, which is the highest order of merit for military and civil action.
Very cool. And the character in this, it's obvious that she's based on her, but also she's just brazen as hell. Like, she talks back to the Germans and everything. It's so cool. Like, Alfred and Aurora are in there in her club, and the Nazis kind of do a raid on the club, and she just talks back to them like nobody's business.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's kind of a thing where it's like, if you act like you have nothing to hide and that you're not afraid, then, maybe a lot of the times if you just stand up for yourself, other people will back down,
And this is also where Aurora and Alfred, I like to call him Alfie. I don't think anyone calls him Alfie, but I do.
You can call him Alfie. They're
not romantic yet, but they have to pretend to be lovers. And that is kind of the start of their little romance. It's not that heavy. Or it's just there, like, in the background a little.
Yeah, it's the fake dating story. We all love to see it.
I love it though. It's quite cute. They all get arrested, and it doesn't really end well for the fellow musician that's in the jail. But we also get a little side plot in this episode, and it's Harry. I didn't really get this episode too much for Harry, but he helps a pregnant woman who is wounded in the accidental bombing that occurred when the Ritzkitz plane went down. And it's like this whole thing where he helps her give birth, and then he takes the baby to the nuns, and I'm like...
Yeah, isn't there a part where he's just like carrying the baby and some Nazis come upon him and they're like, "Where'd you get that baby?"
Yes. They're like in a Jeep or something, and they come upon him, and then they give him a lift to the Abbey, I think.
They're like, "We'll help you bring that baby." Episode 5. They're in Saint Antoine, and they are working with a Vichy French mayor in order to blow up a train that supplies U-boats. And the reason why she's agreed to help them is because a whole bunch of local young women have disappeared. They've been taken by the SS. And she says, I'll help you, but you have to find out what happened to all these local village girls.
Oh, this episode is a really tough watch because it's about SS are running an Aryan Force birthing center with the women that are being taken by the SS. And it's like in this castle, and it's quite like an idyllic place. If it weren't what it actually was, like we don't know right at the beginning, we don't really know what's going on. But it's gross, you guys. It's really disgusting. So they go there, and of course, Alfred, the good guy that he is, wants to free all the women, even though it's going to be a hell of a thing to do. It's quite difficult. So they decide to use a train explosion as a distraction. But it does not go 100% according to plan.
Yeah. So this is from the Holocaust Encyclopedia. Nazi authorities created the Lebensborn program to increase Germany's population. Pregnant German women deemed, quote unquote, racially valuable were encouraged to give birth to their children at Lebensborn homes. So this would include like single mothers, people who they were trying to cut down on the abortion rate from quote unquote racially valuable people. It was weird. And during World War II, the program became complicit in the kidnapping of foreign children with physical features considered Aryan by the Nazis. And as you can imagine, as the German Empire spread, many of those impregnated by the SS and German soldiers and civilians were foreign women, with their consent or not, whose children could be taken by the Lebensborn program if the women were thought to be racially pure.
And they kind of, in this episode, show you illustrations of the perfect nose and the perfect face shape and all that sort of stuff. So it's like breeding, like actual breeding programs for Aryan people. It's quite disgusting.
Yeah, it's pretty gross for sure.
Back at Camp X, Sergeant Christina has been talking to the British behind Sinclair's back, but he kind of knows, and he keeps her where he can keep an eye on her.
Yeah, she is super ambitious. You can tell she really wants to get in on field work and stuff. And Sinclair keeps frustrating her efforts to do that. So
yeah, I feel like he knows, but he's not unkind to her about it, even when he does confront her. That's it later.
Right. And like the British and the Canadians are on the same side. However, obviously each party's involved. They're going to have their own priorities and maybe their own kind of little sub things they've got going on, right? Just a note from this episode, they find a defective bomb at one point that's been sabotaged by people who were forced to make it for the Nazis. And there were stories of this really happening. From The Fall of Fortresses by Elmer Bendener, there's a story in particular about German bombs being taken to be disarmed and found to have no explosive charge. And there was a note inside one of them in Czech that said, "This is all we can do for you now." The book I'm reading right now, The Women Who Flew for Hitler, later on in the war, as they're test flying planes, they keep finding that the planes have been intentionally sabotaged by the French workers who were making them. And so this did happen. I mean, that's what's going to happen if you use slave labor, right? The people who are making stuff for you are going to go out of their way to fuck it up.
Yeah, and the show does this quite a lot, where, like you said, there are some actual little background things that aren't that relevant to the plot, but still give you a sense of what's going on in the real world. I don't think any of the missions are real, as far as we know anyway.
Some of them are based on things that happen in real life or scenarios. But when I was at Juno Beach in 2019, where the Canadians landed at D-Day, there are these German bunkers you can go in and visit. And the German bunkers were built by French slave labor. And what they've done is they've sanded away the covering that was put on the walls inside. And what you can see is that the French, instead of putting the cinder blocks upright where they're structurally sound, they would put them on their side. And of course, that makes the bunker much more likely to collapse if it gets hit by a bomb or something. And so even then, right under the Nazis' noses, people were trying to sabotage them.
They're small acts of resistance, am I right?
Absolutely, yeah. Episode 6. They're in Marmon. Harry is seriously wounded during a factory sabotage mission that's gone awry. They have captured a German radio operator to try and get them intel that will allow them to escape the town because they're kind of surrounded and they have to decide whether to trust him.
I love this episode. This episode is probably my favorite out of this season. It's so good. You get the feeling that this radio operator is sort of like a grunt. I think he's an officer, but he doesn't feel like it. He feels like just a guy doing a job. And that's one of the conflicts in this episode because Neil has to keep an eye on him. And like he ties him up and he talks to him and he gets to know him a little bit. But then, as the episode progresses, they decide that they have to kill him. And Neil is the one who gets to do that. He assumes, and they all do, that this German has betrayed them. But after Neil's killed him, something that took him quite a little bit of time and effort to do because he didn't really want to do it, they found out that this German has not in fact betrayed them and he was gonna cross over and join their side, but they've killed him. So now Neil gets to live with this forever.
This is one of the things I love about this show is that this character who's such a bruiser that I think if you were to see him in a traditional action movie, he'd be the type who would just shoot a guy and walk away, cool as a cucumber. But in this show, they've made it that even killing an enemy has a cost. And it's something that, especially once he finds out that this guy did not, in fact, betray them, it really weighs heavily on him, even though he's supposed to be this kind of hard-ass character. And I really liked that.
It follows him all the way into far into season 2. I can't speak for season 3 because I've not seen it yet. The whole show does this thing where killing is never easy. Every single one of them struggles with killing, and you can see them hesitate and doubt. And it's always a choice. It's never just a point-blank reaction. Or it's like a last resort. Like, they don't make it easy. Very many American movies make killing look like this heroic but easy thing to do. And this show does not at all. You can feel it. It's quite heavy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A young medic named Siobhan, played by Emily Taffa, is brought in to help Harry, and he takes a shine to her, but unfortunately, she turns out to be a Nazi informer.
No!
Wah wah.
Also, Harry's given a lot of morphine, so he does quite a bit of talking to this nurse about things he shouldn't be talking about to this nurse.
Yeah.
And he does really like her. Like, I don't think he's kidding.
No. It sure comes back to bite them in the ass.
As this episode was happening, I knew it already because I thought she was quite eager to help. She was brought in by, I think, the guy whose house they're in. They're in a safe house somewhere. And I thought she would be like if this were an actual just civilian that lived there or a nurse that lived there. She seemed not reluctant enough to me. But I wasn't sure, so when the end came, I was still a little bit surprised.
Like in a lot of shows where you get this mission of the week format, there are throwaway characters, and this show doesn't really do that. It's like you might get a character for more than one episode or whatever, but at no time is anyone 100% in the clear from getting killed or turning out to be a bad guy or whatever, you know?
I thought Siobhan, her motivations are quite interesting. Because it goes back to Ireland and not wanting the English to be in Ireland. And she wants them to get out of Ireland. And so the Germans have promised her, maybe she's a little naive. They've told her, look, after we're done in Europe, we'll come over to Ireland and kick the English out for you.
Well, I mean, and this is, based on historical fact. There was some support in Ireland for the fascist cause, primarily because they were fighting against the English.
Exactly. It's not in the foreground, but if you wanted, you could go look up this little bit of history again. So it's quite nice.
Episode 7. This is the first part of a 2-part episode, so the second last and the last episode of this season. In Paris, the group is tasked with assassinating French collaborators. As you can imagine, they're a little bit hesitant about doing this because they basically get a list of names from Sinclair's British superior, Lieutenant Colonel George Mayhew, played by Adrian Lucas, and something just seems off. It's like they're being asked to go and assassinate a bunch of civilians who may or may not have worked with the Nazis, and it just feels kind of dicey to them.
Yeah, because there's no proof. They just have to believe what's on the paper. Like they have to look at this photo and be like, okay, I'm just gonna go kill this guy. Which is again goes back to the way the show makes killing have a lot of weight. They don't do this easily. The one who struggles the most is Neil. Because he sits in this guy's room, he's waiting for this guy to return to his house. And he sits there for a long time and he sees like a picture, I think, of his kid staring at him, and he turns it around and he puts his gun down, and you almost think he's gonna get out of there. He's not gonna go and do it. So when the time comes for him to actually shoot this person, he doesn't, because he doesn't get the choice, because they end up like grappling on the floor and he gets his ass handed to him a little bit first.
It's a very violent physical fight.
So Aurora, like each of them has their own person to kill. And Aurora is tasked with killing someone who turns out to be someone she knows from before.
Yeah. And Tom, when he finds his target, she's providing medical care to a man named Drabick, played by Craig Parkinson. And he at first is a little bit like kind of leery, because he's, seeing this woman being helpful. And he finds out that Drabick is trying to get intel to the Allies about the concentration camp. And then the woman that Tom's supposed to kill ends up selling them out to the Gestapo. So turns out she was a collaborator. But Tom manages to kill her and get Drabick to safety. And Drabick, not a real person necessarily, but this is the first time that the concentration camps are really coming up. And it's difficult to say precisely in real life when the Allies, quote unquote, knew about the Holocaust. Of course, the word Holocaust wasn't used until much later. They did not really have the, verbiage for this kind of thing that we have now. But the Allied governments released a statement about it in December of 1942, condemning what the Germans were doing. But it's clear that reports were coming in for many months before that. And a central figure in blowing the whistle is Gerhard Riegner, who was a German Jew who heard from extensive business contacts in the summer of 1942 that the Germans were planning on using the pesticide Zyklon B to exterminate Jews en masse. And he tried to get this information to American and British decision makers, but intelligence intermediaries were really skeptical until more reports started coming out, and it became kind of unavoidable.
You would be, though, wouldn't you? Because it's such an unbelievable thing. Like, you don't want to believe that humans can do that to other human beings.
Yeah, for sure.
So our Nazi friend, I say friend, but he's not our friend, Faber, has other problems besides tracking the team down, because he has a little sidekick called Victor Forst, played by Julian M. Doyster. And he has, thinking he's helping him, quote unquote, reported his disabled son. Which will mean, reporting means that he will get picked up by a bus and taken somewhere, I'm guessing some kind of camp, and he will not be long for this world.
Yeah, it's tough, because as soon as Faber learns that his son has been reported, he already knows that his son is going to be killed. And my guy, the cognitive dissonance of working your ass off for this regime that you already know would kill your son if they knew, and that's why you were hiding him. And so he's obviously so upset when he finds out that his son has been reported, but you're also kind of like, dude, nobody asked you to work for the Nazis. Like, this is a career choice that you made.
And also, his wife has got no clue.
Oh yeah, she has no idea. She's in this happy little mindset where she's like, oh, they're going to pick up our son on a bus and take him to a nice summer camp where he gets to hang out with other disabled kids. Like, literally zero clue.
I wonder, though, it feels super naive to me. It feels like one of those German people who just pretended not to know. I don't think she knows, but it's like, how can you not know?
Well, it's one of those things where, you're living your happy little nice, pleasant, upper middle class life, and you don't want to rock the boat or make waves. And honestly, I think it's one of those things where even if you kind of know the borderline of what's happening, maybe the rough shape of it, I don't think in your wildest imagination you would imagine like the infrastructure of the Holocaust. So I think obviously it's silly and she's completely naive, but I do think there were probably people who were like, oh, yeah, like the Jews are getting picked up and we never see them again. And then they just don't think about it any further than that, which is not an excuse for anything that happened. But I mean, you and I know people who don't read the news now.
I used to be one of those people.
Yeah, we're out there.
It's like sticking your head in the sand because that's the most convenient. And then you genuinely do not know what's going on.
Well, and even, even after Kristallnacht, you had Goebbels out here being like, we didn't touch a hair on a single Jew's head. And why would you be reporting that terrible propaganda? So the government was denying that all this was happening. And if you're someone who is enjoying your little life and you don't want to think too much, you're going to be like, okay, I'll trust the government.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I mean, Faber's wife, she's an interesting character. We'll meet her a little more in season 2, but obviously someone who's lived an extremely privileged life. She's very sheltered. So
Yes. By the way, what did you think of Forst? I hate Forst. He's pretending to be his friend, but he's also furthering his own career.
Oh, yeah. He's like, oh, guess what? I did you a huge favor. I reported your disabled son. And it's just like, okay, thank you, I guess. Yeah, he sucks, but luckily he gonna get his comeuppance. Right, so episode 8, the season finale. As the team try to reach their rendezvous point in the catacombs, they realize that a massive roundup of Jews is underway. And of course, they have just learned about the extent of what is happening to these Jews who get rounded up and deported. And so they're determined that they're going to smuggle out Drabak, the Holocaust witness, so that he can get this information and sound the alarm to the world.
Yeah. This episode was good. I really enjoyed this as a season finale. It's quite good. So we get a couple little different pairs of characters in this episode again. Somebody make copies of a pamphlet to try and get the message out to people to fight back. And it's actually Tom's Edman skills that he makes like this really pretty poem that they put on the pamphlet, which I quite liked. But then Tom is shot trying to help some Jews escape capture. And you're like, oh no, what's going to happen to Tom? We don't know.
Literally, because this show will literally kill a main character. They don't give a shit. Siobhan, who has returned to lure the team into a trap, has a crisis of conscience. And she reveals that she was a double agent because she learns the true nature of what the Germans are doing. Like, she also was in the dark about the concentration camps and all that stuff. So when she finds out, she reveals to the team that she was a double agent the whole time. And she's like, look, when Harry was high, he told me a bunch of shit and I told it all to the Germans. So now the Germans know all about Alfred, unfortunately, and his photographic memory, and they're going to be tracking him down. And obviously, Harry feels pretty terrible about this.
He does, because he did really like her, and now he feels really guilty that he said all this stuff about his team to this girl who's just playing them. Also, when Aurora finds her and she's trying to, take a bunch of painkillers, that scene is brutal. Aurora's like, you don't get to die, you're coming with me.
Oh, yeah, I totally forgot about that, actually.
Now that the Nazis know about Alfred, you just know that he's got all this valuable information in his head, right? So they have to go and get him. And guess what? They do. They capture him. Aurora is supposed to shoot him because he's got all the secrets of all the operations and all that. And she's supposed to shoot him, but she looks at him as they hold him, and she can't do it. She shakes her head at him. And he looks at her with his sad eyes. This guy's got such sad eyes.
He does. And I really liked this because we're going to find out later when Aurora is asked to make another super tough choice about killing someone, she does it. She follows through with it. And so the fact that she doesn't kill Alfred when Sinclair has told her that at all costs, we do not let Alfred get captured because he has all this information and he can basically destroy our entire network in France, even though she knows how important it is, she can't do it. So this is a huge, huge character moment for her.
I made a joke about the actor who plays Alfred when I was watching this, not this episode specifically, but this face this man pulls, He just looks like unhappy all the time and tense all the time. He's just a walking meme.
He does. To be fair, I think he is probably tense and unhappy all the time. And right after we see Aurora have this intense moment where we realize the strength of her feelings for Alfred, we find out that Rene is still alive and he's been captured by the Germans who planted false evidence about his death, and they've been holding him the whole time.
And funny detail about this, Alfred knew about this. He didn't tell anyone, but he figured it out.
Yeah, he sort of looked at the fabrication that the Germans had done and was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, he's probably still alive, but he didn't have like proof, I guess.
In another shocking moment no one has asked for in this episode, Franz Faber, as a sign of mercy, kills his own son before he gets taken away by the Nazis.
Yeah, oh my God, y'all. He's crying. The son doesn't understand what's happening. And the Sabina, Franz's wife, is outside the door and she's also crying, and it's absolutely gutting. And part of me was like, surely, because they kind of cut away, so you don't actually watch a child get smothered to death. And part of me was like, maybe he chickens out at the last second and actually his son gets smuggled to safety. I thought that was a genuine possibility. I wasn't sure if the show was going to go there. And then it definitely did. And I was like, oh my God, man, it's so fucking rough.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't want to feel sympathy for this man. I don't need him to be on our side. I'm fine with him being evil. Don't make me feel stuff for him. But you do. You feel for him as a father. I think you're meant to feel for him as a father and as a human being.
Yeah, it's killer writing for sure. And we also get, right at the end, our first Dieppe mention. The Dieppe raid is going to be a major factor in the plot in coming seasons. So right now we're July 1942, and the Dieppe raid took place on the 19th of August, so it's coming up.
We're going to tell you more about the Dieppe raid in the next episode.
Yes, we absolutely are. I have just a couple notes about Camp X. I read this book called Inside Camp X by Lynn Phillip Hodgson. And the camp itself opened December 6th, 1941. And the reason why this date is relevant is because just before Pearl Harbor and the Americans entering the war. And when it was built, it was between Whitby and Oshawa on the shores of Lake Ontario. It was a collaborative effort between the British Security Coordination and the Canadian government. And part of its initial purpose was to link Britain and the US when the US was still officially neutral. So it was kind of a little sneaky backdoor. Here's how we can communicate without anybody knowing. The area today is known as Intrepid Park, and the reason why it's called that is it's named after the wartime intelligence code name for the BSC's director, Canadian soldier and spy master Sir William Stevenson, who was famously an inspiration for James Bond. Ian Fleming himself once wrote, "James Bond is a highly romanticized version of a true spy. The real thing is William Stevenson."
So cool.
Right?
Again, I'll just say again and again and again, this is such a cool show. And I wish more people knew about it. So I'm so glad we're doing this episode.
Me too. And I'm beyond excited to explore more as the seasons progress, because I just feel like it keeps getting better. I almost want to say season 3 is my favorite season, but I'm like, maybe I was just more invested by then, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm nearly at the end of season 2 right now, so I'm slightly behind, but I will be caught up by the time we do more recording.
We are going to rate this show, but we're going to wait until we get all the way to the end.
Because it's hard to rate seasons each on their own.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you reading anything?
I am reading something. I am reading Unauthorized Action, Mountbatten and the Dieppe Raid by Brian Loring Villa. I just started it last night, and oh boy, I haven't read a book by a real historian in a while. And I don't mean that in the sense that journalists and other people who write history-oriented books are not quote-unquote real historians, but I just mean this guy actually is a historian. He studied history. And so the first part of the book is him being here's what other historians have said about Dieppe. I'm going to tell you why they're wrong. So I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of it.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm also reading another book. I've been keeping up on my reading, guys. I am reading The Spy Who Loved by Claire Mully after finishing Agent Zero by Claire Mully. And if this is telling you anything, Sam is reading The Woman Who Flew for Hitler, also by Claire Mully. We might have a Claire Mully related episode coming up for you soon.
Yeah, y'all should check out her books if you haven't. But even if you haven't, I'm sure you're going to enjoy the episode.
Yes. That's all for today, folks. Thank you so much for listening. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, on Spotify, on Amazon, wherever the fuck you want. You can send an episode to a friend. You should definitely send this episode to a friend so more people get to know about X Company. And you can follow us on Instagram at Rosie the Reviewer Podcast or visit our website at rosieTheReviewer.com. I've recently been posting some related articles on there if you're interested. And rate us 5 stars once you're there. I don't care.
Yes, we do care. Rate us 5 stars. Also, y'all definitely check out the website because Mart is underselling it. Everything that she posts on there is really good and you should go check it out.
Thank you. See you next week.
Bye.